We're going to hear from Dee in United States of America. She's a ROGD mom.
I am the mother of two beautiful girls. We adopted them from China, and one is 12 and the other 17. A little over 2 years ago, in June of 2019, what I thought was a very happy 17-year-old boy crazy girl came out at the dinner table as bisexual. And then 2 months later, she said she was gay, and just a week or two later claimed to be trans. Against this backdrop, she had come into a friendship with a very gender nonconforming girl. And turns out that's the child that took my daughter down the proverbial rabbit hole. By way of background, when we adopted her in China, she was 13 months old. She weighed only 15 pounds. She could not crawl or hold a bottle. We thought perhaps her arm was broken or there was some disability. But in 11 days, she gained her strength and was able to hold the bottle. When we brought her home, I took her to a specialist in New York who examined her and diagnosed her as a failure to thrive baby. She said, we got the baby just in time. I knew that the orphanage was not the best, but I had no idea how bad it really was. It was so bad, we were not allowed to see it. And that's unusual when you're adopting in China. Over the next few years, as she grew, she experienced extensive night terrors and some horrific flashbacks. And the flashbacks were so profound that at one point she couldn't sleep in her bedroom for 3 months. She had to sleep on the floor by our bed. When she was 8 years old, she took me aside to tell me that she knew we loved her, that she loved us, but there was a piece of her heart missing, and she needed to know who she was. She seemed to be relatively happy through the middle school, grammar school years. High school was a big change because she went from a very small Christian school to a large public high school. And for me, this was quite an experiment because I had 19 years of a Catholic education, which I survived, but I was not familiar with the public schools or how they were run. So once she came out as trans, she began to experience extraordinary panic attacks. So we went to a therapist in September of 2019. And by the fourth visit, that therapist demanded that I take her to the suicide unit because she was having suicidal ideation. What I found when I reflect back, my child was happy until she declared herself to be a boy. So they released her the next day. The plan she had was to drown herself, but if you don't do it with drugs or alcohol, it's a plan that's doomed to fail. The psychiatrist I met with upon discharge told me that this was clearly related to her adoptee status, that she was in an extraordinary identity crisis. We fired that therapist and went to another one. Unbeknownst to us, that therapist was going to use the child's male name and her male pronouns. And by the end of December, beginning of January 2020, I realized this therapy was not helping. I hacked into my daughter's iPhone and was stunned and shocked and profoundly disturbed by what I saw. That so-called friend of hers in 300 screenshots was sharing lesbian pornography with her. She was characterizing my daughter by lesbian sexually dominant positions. My daughter was making up stuff about me, like I forced her to wear dresses, I forced her to wear corsets, I forced her to wear pink, none of which was true. But the child came back with, she decided to diagnose me as textbook abusive, gaslighter, trauma bonder, and a lot of expletives deleted, and highly recommended that my husband divorce me and take the children away from me. This is a 15-year-old, by the way. So I was shocked and stunned, and it really profoundly impacted my relationship with my child. It really was toxic. I couldn't even look at her. I was so angry and I felt like I had been stabbed. She did nothing to defend me. And then the girl also mentioned that all of her friends' mothers had a safe house for her. I met with that kid's mother, and it turns out the mother was under the clear impression that we lived in an abusive home, which was frightening for me because I was applying for a position that I would not have gotten if social services had decided to investigate me, whether I was cleared or not, which is why I'm not appearing with my face, because it can affect your ability to get a job. In any event, we then fired the second therapist. It wasn't working. We hired another one that we had to fire after the first visit because she used the male name when we asked her not to. And it was then in March of 2020. Now, it took me 6 months to figure out what was going on. And I've got a legal background, but Google did not want me to learn about rapid onset gender dysphoria. It really made a concerted effort to block me.
And Google realmente estaba haciendo un esfuerzo para bloquearme.
Yeah. And so I found Lisa
Conocí.
And I found Sasha Ayad. I had a consult with her. And at that point, I had found a psychologist who specialized in body dysmorphia and anorexia. And Sasha said she thought that would be a good fit. And it has been a good fit. The woman confirmed for me last month, that my daughter is not a transgender, that she suffers from pre-adoption trauma. No surprise there, okay? And what I also learned last year in a webinar sponsored by the Netherlands is that the first wave of girls coming out as boys were Chinese adoptees. I contacted our adoption agency and I said, is any other mother with her hair on fire calling you to say, this is what's going on? He said, no, but we've had a number of our adoptees transition. And the second wave in the Netherlands were girls on the autism spectrum. And I believe that this friend of my daughter's is on the spectrum and her mother believes that too. This is a cult, women, ladies, it's a cult. There's a great book. It's called Desist, Detrans, and Detox by Maria Keffler of the Partners for the Ethical Coalition. The mother that I met with said, I know it's a cult because I was in a cult. She herself had been in an evangelical cult. She got herself out of it, but they basically married her off to her husband. She really didn't have much of a choice in that, but she got herself out of it. So she is committed to getting her daughter out of the cult as well. We are still working with the psychologist. My child has a fear of growing up. She doesn't, can't think about going to college. It's overwhelming. And so we've made baby steps in progress. I can tell you that cognitive behavioral therapy has worked. And this is a marathon. It's not going away anytime soon. I found out that she's been following a quote unquote gender surgeon on TikTok. This is a plastic surgeon who uses TikTok and Instagram and Facebook to glamorize mastectomies of healthy breasts, promotes them as life-changing, happy. I can make you, happy overnight with pictures of patients with their scarred chests, right there for children to see. And I know from studying it that children under 13 are even looking at these videos. So this is a war on women. This is absolutely a war on women. It's trying to erase us. And I know it's happening to boys as well, but girls, I think there's been a 4,400% increase in girls identifying as boys in the past 10 years. So I am hoping that love carries the day in our house. My daughter's still firmly entrenched in the ideology. From a personality standpoint, she's a compassionate, empathic individual. And, but she's not a leader, she's a follower. And I think that's how she got down the rabbit hole so quickly. So I pray every day. I'm not a religious woman, but I do have some faith. And I just hope that, as she grows up, but I fear her turning 18 because then I really lose all control and authority under the law. The kid can run out to Planned Parenthood and get her testosterone fix, if you will. And that's another issue I have with Planned Parenthood. I was a supporter of women's reproductive health rights, but I wrote them a letter saying, this is not a reproductive health right. You are sterilizing women. You're returning to your eugenic roots. And so I can no longer support. And in fact, they're making more money off testosterone than any other health service that they provide. So this is the anti-reproductive health as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I am not alone. I belong to a group of women who are going through this. And I also am very heartened by the launch of a website called genspect.org. They are doing wonderful work advocating for parents like us who have to, withstand comments such as you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe. The school, I had to run to the school and run interference. They were using the male name, the male pronouns. I have to do it with the driver's ed instructor. I have to do it with any adult that she encounters to say to them, please do not use the male name because you're making it more difficult for her to dial it back when the time comes. I can't control what the kids say. I can't control what the cousins do. I have family members that I think are opposed to the way I'm raising my child, the way my husband and I are raising our child. And it really, you feel like you're under siege 24/7. It's a very difficult situation. I love this child. When they placed her in my arms, it was one of the happiest days of my life. And I see this ideology just ripping her out of the family. It's destroying families, and the impact on the younger one in the house can't be underestimated either. So this is warfare. This is warfare. And I'm grateful to the women like you that are on the front lines battling, because we worked so hard to get to where we are today, and we still have a long way to go. So thank you.